energy rides coming from beautiful Pennsylvania, USA. Today I'm going to talk about the best brand new motorcycle you can buy that's from 1987, the Yamaha TW200. I bought one of these in October of 2021. There it is. That's at the dealership the day I picked it up. Neat looking bike, right? Screams 1980s. What it really screams is Yamaha 1980s with the shiny plastic, and I don't know how Yamaha managed to maintain that same level of shine on their plastic all these years, but it's fantastic. But it is authentic 1980s. It's not one of these retro machines. It is Reagan and Thatcher, Back to the Future, even A Flock of Seagulls, 1980s. Some of it looks even older, though. Enter the instrument cluster. The instrument cluster looks like it's from the 1970s and even from the 1960s. Please note that the engine redlines at 55 miles per hour, except that it doesn't redline at 55 miles per hour. That illustrates just how neglected this motorcycle has been as far as improvements, updates, development. 55 was the national speed limit in the 1980s. Now look, this isn't criticism. This is part of what makes the motorcycle so appealing. You could buy a brand new motorcycle that is from the 1980s. Didn't even update the instrument cluster. Okay, they did rip the Kickstarter off and I guess gave it a bigger alternator about 25 years ago and a front disc brake. Other than that, it is essentially the same. The other thing about the instrument cluster, what is this? A review of the instrument cluster. The thing from the 60s is that little pod to the right of the speedometer. The turn, high beam, and neutral. That always reminds me of a gadget you might see on the Batmobile from the 1960s. Like that blue high beam button is beckoning you to hit it and turn on the bat beam. The engine in the TW200 is a 196cc 4-stroke engine. Nothing fancy. This might put a lot of buyers off, potential buyers. Yamaha doesn't give out horsepower figures for this engine, but I read around the internet, the estimates are between 13 and 16 horsepower. I'm guessing 13. It's not going to set the world on fire. The funny thing about it is, it feels very torquey. It feels very, very good when you're taking off, from a stop, that type of thing, or going up hills. It's a cooperative engine. It does vibrate a little bit. The only time the bike feels slow is when you're trying to go fast on it, if that makes any sense. The rest of the time, it feels perfectly in character. I did actually take this motorcycle on the interstate. It was Interstate 81 outside of Hazleton, Pennsylvania, for mile marker 145 to 141. Let me set the scene here. It was a Friday afternoon, rush hour. It's slightly uphill. The semi-trailers are going 70, the cars are going 80, and the fat guy on the Yamaha is going 51. Every muscle in his arm strained against the throttle, trying to get 52 miles per hour out of it. It's not good for the interstate. That being said, I did regularly get the bike to go 60 miles per hour, maybe 61 miles per hour. I don't think you're going to get much more than that out of it, though. The fuel tank is just like a Ford V10 in that capacity is 6.8 liters or 1.7 US gallons. That's really not that much of a concern for a few reasons. The first tank I ran through the bike, I got 78 miles per gallon. The next tank was 86 miles per gallon. And after that, with the engine loosened up, it never went below 86. I got one tank that was 92 or 94. I can't remember exactly. It was one of those. Either way, it's not a concern. The other reason it's not a concern is the seat. The seat looks neat again, wonderfully, looked fantastic plastic again, wonderfully 1980s, comfortable in the way that a church pew might be comfortable if you've just completed a 10-hour forced march. But the squirming will soon commence. When you do stop for fuel or to give your backside a break, you will find that people essentially don't leave you alone. Now, I ride this Royal Enfield Classic 350, and I get a lot of comments and people admiring it and questions, but not like the TW. The TW, people have stopped their cars to ask about the TW. I was at a convenience store getting gas, and I hear somebody say, "Oh," he says, "my dream bike, a TW." And I thought he was kidding, because, it's just a little motorcycle. Nothing special about it other than it being from the 1980s. But, no, he says, yeah, he was just traveling through. He's from, I think, New Hampshire. He says, a bunch of my friends have these, and they're like, we can go anywhere. He says, I'm going to get one. I just haven't yet. So he was completely serious. His dream bike, a TW. Other people ask, how does it handle with those fat tires? Which is funny to me, because you see guys on power cruisers or whatever that have these ridiculously fat tires. And I don't think people ask them, how does it handle in those fat tires? There's something endearing and approachable about the fat tires on the TW. I mean, the tires are the signature of the motorcycle. So, children wave when you go by. I'm not kidding. It is just funny how much people love the Yamaha TW200. I never did any modifications to the TW while I owned it. I had it from 2021 till 2023. I did have a fantasy, though, at the time. I wanted to find one that had a blown engine. It was really, really in horrible shape. You can't find them with blown engines. I don't think it's possible to kill a TW completely. I would see them for sale often with, they looked like they grew up in Beirut in the 1980s. I mean, they were just bombed out. But they always ran. It would always say, oh, runs good. No title, runs good. Anyway, I always thought it would be neat to put one of Yamaha's 350 single-cylinder engines in one. The suspension, I think back in the 1980s when they were designing this, at some point somebody said, oh, I guess we have to put some kind of suspension on this. And another guy in the room said, I found these pieces in the garbage earlier. Let's just put those on. The suspension is not very good. No, let's call it mediocre. The ride quality is mediocre. The handling is mediocre. But that being said, in town, in an urban setting, the TW is more fun than you would ever believe. It looks like a dirt bike. No, it really shines in an urban setting where you don't have to go super fast, but you got that torque, and you could just run in and out of, oh, fantastic in an urban setting. You know what? It's good off-road too, but it's nothing fancy. You're not going to be doing double jumps or anything like that, not without, a hospital visit afterwards. Sometimes when you're riding a real dedicated dirt bike, you might have to work on your technique, about feathering the clutch in this mud and weighting this and that peg and whatever. With the TW, you don't do any of that. The technique for riding a TW off-road is to sit on it and give it throttle. Pretty much. And the bike handles it. Handles the situation. Pretty much whatever's in front of you. Gary, a viewer, sent me a picture of his TW. He has the rear luggage rack on it, Tusk handguards, cogent dampening in springs, he tells me. You can't tell that by looking at it. And that excellent front tire. I would love to try a TW with a tire like that on off-road. I might have to employ a technique. First, I'd have to learn a technique. I don't really know any. But thank you, Gary. I love what you did with that TW. I started the video talking about buying a new TW200. Obviously, you don't need to do that. They've been around for nearly 40 years. There are plenty of used ones on the market, and they're in relatively good shape. Do beware, though, there were some years where Yamaha, seems like they released a maniac from the basement, gave him a bunch of crayons and said, have your way with the TW200, and you get something like this. My first thought when I saw this was, well, it's kind of pretty, but it's got an Adam's apple the size of a goiter. I showed it to my wife, and she said, it looks like the 90s puked all over that motorcycle. And I thought, yeah, that's an accurate assessment. Not for me, but who knows? If that floats your boat, by all means, go for it. Still expect to pay, you're going to pay close to $3,000 for a good one. I see knackered ones for less. Stay away, avoid. But yeah, get yourself a TW. You're going to love it. Thanks for watching. FG Rides in Pennsylvania, USA.